So within county courts, there are a number of different courts that are set up to deal with special groups of people. They're mostly on the criminal side. There are drug courts, DUI courts, mental health courts, veterans courts. Some cross over into both felonies and misdemeanors. In Marion County, we have about 6 kinds of just drug courts. We have what's called expansion drug court, which is for people who have been convicted of felonies and are going to go to prison, and so their last chance is to attempt to get clean through a drug court. They mess that up, they go to prison. There's an adult drug court, which is felony drug court. It's similar to misdemeanor court, and I'll talk a lot more about misdemeanor court, of course. There's juvenile drug court for children under the age of 18 who have committed crimes as a result of or who have a drug problem. There is also dependency drug court, which is a drug court set up for cases where people are in danger of losing their children because of their substance abuse. They may not have ever been arrested, but clearly substance abuse is an issue. DCF has been brought in, and so that's another drug court that we have. We have a veterans court, which can also involve drug abuse, and we have a DUI court. DUI doesn't always mean alcohol, and mental health court, which often people in mental health also have issues with drug use due to co-occurring complications. So drug court is designed within the misdemeanor system to, it's a volunteer situation. You can only get into drug court if misdemeanor drug court. Now, in order to be eligible for misdemeanor drug court, you have to be charged with a misdemeanor, which gets back to the crimes that Judge Militello talked about. There are a couple of crimes for which you cannot get into drug court. One of them is traffic crimes. The reason the traffic crimes are not eligible is that the legislature does not want people who are charged with a DUI to be able to have their charges dismissed. They want them to be dealt with through the regular criminal proceeding. And battery is not eligible primarily because of the violent nature of the crime. But otherwise, you are eligible to ask to go into misdemeanor drug court if you're charged with a misdemeanor, and the only other disqualifier is you cannot have been convicted of a felony at any time in the past. You can have pled to a felony, guilty or no contest, and had adjudication withheld. But if the courts have adjudicated you guilty of the felony, then you cannot get into you cannot get into misdemeanor drug court. We're hopeful that the legislature may look at that. There are a number of third-degree felonies that drug abusers and drug addicts get convicted of, which are not violent in nature, and which subsequently bar them from being able to get into misdemeanor drug court. As I was saying, now, within the traditional court system, the differences are here to be read, and rather than read it, I'll kind of go over and briefly summarize it. But in a traditional court system, if you're charged with any of these crimes, you plea. Generally speaking, you go on probation. Part of your probation is to have regular drug tests. If you test positive, your probation is violated and you go to jail. You may subsequently be reinstated to back on probation, or you may just go to jail and finish your term. There is, within the probation, there's a small amount of substance abuse counseling that is sometimes ordered to be done. There is drug testing that's ordered while you're on probation. And occasionally you're ordered to take a substance abuse course, but the only monitoring that's done is through an occasional, roughly monthly random drug screen, and you report to your probation officer once a month, and not always in person. Now, under the drug court system, we require that you come to court every week when we start. We require that you are drug tested every week. We require that you call every day to see if you're going to be drug tested. We require that you have a substance abuse evaluation by a licensed clinical substance abuse counselor. We require that you comply with every requirement of your counselor and with your treatment. We check up on you weekly to confirm that you are attending your treatment and that you are engaged in the treatment practices that your provider has recommended. Basically what happens is I accept you into misdemeanor drug court, I order you to counseling, and I order you to comply with every recommended treatment or anything else they recommend, and if you don't do it, you're violating a court order, which makes you subject to sanctions. Now, while all of those differences are very valuable if you are trying to get off of drugs, one of the primary factors in getting people to come into drug court, quite frankly, is the cost. If you are convicted of, let's say, possession of less than 20 grams of marijuana, which is a misdemeanor that would allow you to come into drug court. If you're convicted of possession of drug paraphernalia, you'll be ordered to pay court costs, which in Marion County are about $220. You'll receive a fine of up to $1,000. You will be required to pay a minimum of $50 cost of prosecution in the state attorney's office. If you've been represented by the public defender, that's going to cost you a minimum of another $100, $50 for the public defender's office and $50 for the clerk, who has a statutory fee. In addition to that, you're going to be ordered to do some community service. You're going to be ordered to report to probation on a monthly basis. The fee for that is $65. You'll be ordered to participate in random drug screens. I believe that is about $45 to $50 a month minimum, or a screen minimum, through the Salvation Army. And you will be ordered to go to some type of drug evaluation and some treatment, which you also have to pay for. And you're either going to have 6 months or a year to complete that. So you've got all those monthly payments, plus you've got that fine, court costs, and all those other fees that have to be paid within that year in order to complete your probation. If you come into my drug court, it's a $25 application fee. It's $10 a month as an administrative fee to try to help the county recapture a little money. You are required to go to treatment, so you've got that same expense. My treatment providers, you're probably going to have to go to more treatment if you're in drug court than you do on probation, so that may run you a little more money. And right now, we're not charging for drug tests. We've got a grant. We've been able to, so we can test more often, and we don't have that charge either. So one of the ways that I've tried, and the program is designed to try to get people to come in, is by giving them some financial incentives to do that. It's a bit unfortunate that for many people that's the incentive that's most important to them at the time, but we don't really care. We want you in drug treatment because if we can successfully complete drug treatment, then we can accomplish the goals that we have as a society, which are not always the same goals as the individual may have, especially at the beginning. Now, here are a few of the regular goals that are set out. These are kind of drug court across the nation. We want to increase public safety. That's our number one priority. That's our number one priority in regard to any type of criminal situation, whether it's circuit, whether it's county. The first thing, obviously, is we're looking at public safety to make sure that people who might be inclined to injure people don't get to do that. We want to participate in sharing information about the program. We want to communicate with local criminals, justice, and treatment providers about what's going on. But we also have some goals in our drug court. I think Judge Militello has these too. We want, as a goal, we want the individual who's come into drug court to be able to grow as a person. We want that person to find and know that there is a path to sobriety. We want that person to have the knowledge to be able to stay sober when they're done in court. We want to ensure that we're moving forward with the education. Many of the people who come into drug court have, many of the men have an 8th grade education. They dropped out of school sometime in the 8th or 9th grade. Many of the women have a 10th grade education. They dropped out of school in the 10th grade or between the 10th and 11th. Not all, of course, and drugs aren't situated just with that, but many of them do. And so if you fall into that category, we want, when we push you to get a GED, we're basically requiring that you find out what's going on and that you work on getting your GED. We require and look for the individuals to be as healthy as possible. So many of the people who come into drug court have never had a physical, whether they're 25, 35, or 55, they've never had a physical in their life. we make everybody get a physical so we can find out what's happening. If it's a woman and if there's a pregnancy involved, we make sure that they have a OBGYN appointments. We make sure that they're following prenatal care. To date, misdemeanor drug court in Marion County has had, I believe it's 4, it might be 5 now, babies born drug-free. And that's one of the things that we're most proud of, is that if you come into drug court, we're going to make sure that you're able to have a baby that is not addicted to drugs when you're done. We're going to make sure that an individual in drug court has a good job. We do everything we can to promote. I require that you have employment. We do everything that we can to promote that you get some type of a job that gives you a career, something that you like to do, and something that pays a decent wage. We work on that all the time. And finally, we look for financial wherewithal. So we study and we work with people on budgeting, on how you can stretch your dollars. Many of these people have no idea what a budget is. Many of these people have no idea how much money they spend on drugs. Some of them are flabbergasted when you sit down and you actually run through the numbers, and they begin to realize how much money they're spending on drugs. Many of them are also making money in a manner that's not legal, and so that's another reason why we have to get them on a job, and we have to get them into a position where they can support themselves. Now, benefits for the defendant. As I indicated, for many defendants, especially when we first start, the first benefit they see is it's a cheaper path to resolve their issues with the court system at that time. But if you misdemeanor drug court is a pre-plea. You volunteer to be in the program. If you fill out an application, your application is staffed and reviewed by me, a prosecutor, a public defender. If you have a private lawyer, they're welcome to come to that staffing. The drug court personnel who work for and with the court administration, and all of our treatment providers who come to staffings. We review the application to determine that that person appears to be someone who would benefit from drug court, and if they do, then we allow you into drug court. If you successfully complete drug court, the charges are dismissed. So if it's a possession of marijuana, if it's a possession of drug paraphernalia, if it's a prostitution charge, whatever the charge is, your charges are dismissed if you successfully complete. And then, of course, we are looking for the individual to find that path to being a successful and helpful member of society, as well as to be able to live a drug-free life. And of course, if they've taken advantage of the program, they will end up with, at a minimum, a GED or their diploma. They will have decent employment when we're done, hopefully, with some type of health care. And they will understand why they have the concerns that they have and why they have the problems that they have. Now, working with us in drug court are all of these different entities. We have the state attorney's office, we have the defense bar and the public defender, both of whom are referral service sources. Either can come to drug court and say, this person looks like a good person for drug court. If that's the case, we get them the information they need. They go to court administration, fill out an application. We have people who will help them fill out the application. So if they have issues with literacy or if they have issues with the language, we make sure that they have assistance so that they can properly get the application filled out and have their case staffed. Then we have our treatment providers. We have community corrections services and law enforcement, and we have the judge and court administration. Judge and court administration, of course, oversees them once they're in drug court and makes sure that they're eligible to be in drug court. Community correction services and law enforcement, that's another place that does occasionally provide us with referrals. They'll occasionally arrest somebody and tell them you need to check out drug court. There's a few officers doing that. In addition to that, our treatment providers are partners in that, in addition to working with the people who are have substance abuse issues, they also come to staffings every week where we discuss each individual. Now, how do drug courts work? I've touched on this a little bit, but a little bit more in depth. When a person is accepted into drug court, in misdemeanor drug court, your first minimum of 6 weeks. You come to court every week. Every week before you come to court, court is Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. We also have court at 4 o'clock on Wednesday in the afternoon for individuals who, because of employment or school, can't make the Thursday morning. Otherwise, you come at Thursday. We staff every case every week that if you're coming to court. So in that first section, which is a minimum of 6 weeks, but can be longer depending on how you progress, we talk about that individual every week. We talk to that individual's treatment provider. We talk to our court staff who are talking to those individuals when they come in for screens, who are checking in with them on the phone. We discuss every case. Every week we make some decisions about how that person is doing, and then we hold court, and every individual who's in drug court comes up and addresses the court. And even if it's just to say, how are you doing? I got good results. What I hear is great. If there are issues, we want to know, do you have an employment issue? Do you have a living place issue? Do you have a problem with your neighbors? Whatever, because we're trying to get these people to understand that there's a network of help. Many of us all know that if I have a problem, I can talk to my pastor, I can talk to my lawyer, I can talk to my best friend. A lot of these individuals, they don't have any kind of a network of assistance other than people they do drugs with, in which case, generally speaking, hey, I got this problem, and the answer is always, well, let's just get high. It won't be such a bad deal. So we try to provide all of the individuals with a new system of being able to deal with their problems, being able to try to address their problems. Additionally, drug courts work by requiring that a person is responsible for what they do. So if you mess up, if you test positive, if you don't go to meetings like you're supposed to, we address it in court. There's the possibility for sanctions. Sanctions can be go to more meetings. Sanctions can be go to more treatment. They can be something similar to Judge Militello. We can give them some community service. We can make them go to the dump and work. And as a final analysis or a final effort, sometimes I'll send them to jail for a few days. One of the most important things about drug courts are that when you come back from whatever it is you've been sanctioned for, it's a new day. We start over. I don't hold that against you. It is true that if you have 2 or 3 or 4, the sanctions are going to ramp up and get worse, because we're just like anything else. We're trying to get you to understand that the pain of messing up versus the pleasure of not. But we don't hold it against them. We go forward again. It's a new day. I knew I was going to do that sooner or later. The drug court team. I've gone over this a little bit already, but the team that works with these individuals, we have a lot of help in Marion County. We're blessed in that way. In addition to having the judge, the state attorney, the public defender, our probation officers, our treatment clinicians, and our court coordinators, we also require everyone to go to group meetings. They can be like AA, they can be NA, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a number of other types of meetings because AA and NA are based on the 12 steps and they're based on religion. A participant does not have to go to AA or NA. They have to go to some type of a similar meeting. We give every participant a list of all of the meetings in Marion County and the times and the places they meet. It is impossible to not be able to go to meetings. We require you to go to at least 1 meeting a week when you're in treatment, otherwise at least 2. And then one of the sanctions can be that we ask you to go to more meetings. One of the reasons for that is because when you go to a consistent, once they find a meeting they like, you go to that meeting, you build a community of people who are invested in you, who are invested in your sobriety. We do the same thing with court. When you come to court on Thursday or Wednesday, everybody stays until everybody has addressed the court. We celebrate success. Everybody knows when there's been a setback. And so we build a community trying to provide that same assistance and help to each individual. We have an alumni group, which is people who have successfully completed drug courts, not just misdemeanor drug courts, but the felony drug courts as well. And these are individuals, many of whom have been arrested hundreds of times, who have been through treatment numerous times, and have finally gotten to a place in their life where they're able to stay sober. And so they're able to provide great assistance to people who are struggling and who don't believe they can be sober. And so we also have great help throughout the community from our religious and other volunteer organizations. We have help with getting people clothes, getting people jobs, finding people a bicycle to ride if they don't have a car, helping people to get an ID card if they don't have an ID card or a driver's license. We could not do what we do without the assistance of many of our community programs. These are some of the services that we provide during drug court. As I indicated, we require regular screens. You have to call every day to see if it's your day to be screened, and you're not subject to only being screened once a week. We'll throw 2 in a row in there sometimes. And the idea is initially to provide a little bit of that fear of I don't know when I'm going to get called. If you look over there, I put up a poster, which you can look at later, that has many of the drugs we deal with, but not all of them. And that poster also shows you the amount of time it takes to wash the stuff out. And so we have people who try to, play the game of, well, I can get high today on whatever my drug of choice is because I know I won't get called for a couple of days. And so we try to make sure that there's enough randomness in there that it's a benefit to the individual to say, no, I might get caught, I better not do it. And sometimes that's all it takes to keep them from relapsing. We are required by the statute, by the Florida legislature, to provide our drug courts and to conduct our drug courts in a manner that is based on the evidence-based best practices. And this is established by the legislature in Florida Statute 397.334, which basically says that if you're going to have a drug court, doesn't matter which drug court it is, it sets forth a number of requirements of what we are required to do to make sure that we're staying in compliance with what the state wants done. And quite frankly, the reason we have drug courts is because the legislature has come to the conclusion, I think that we all have, which is for decades we've dealt with substance abuse by sticking people in jail. And people go to jail for a while, and while they're in jail, they're not doing any drugs, usually, hopefully. And obviously, they're not out creating problems. But as soon as they come out, they still are drug addicts because there's nothing that happens in the jail that changes that. People abuse drugs for the most part because they're dealing with some trauma or problem. Sometimes it's a problem that you and I would say, oh my God, I don't know how that person gets out of bed every day. Because some people are dealing with being the victims of child rape or all kinds of really horrible things. Other people deal with stuff and you and I would say, I don't get it, what's your problem? But it doesn't matter because it is to that person a trauma that they can't deal with. And they deal with it, and they have dealt with it by going and using a substance and forgetting about it. And so in order to be successful, we have to give that person information. We have to give that person knowledge. And the knowledge comes from the drug treatment. The knowledge comes from the program, from using the evidence-based practices, because by going to treatment, they don't just learn what drugs are bad or how drugs affect them. They get the opportunity to figure out why they're doing the drugs, why they're making the choice to deal with their problems by going to a substance. They also, in order to get and stay clean, you have to have help. You have to have people you can call on. You have to have people that understand. And so the help comes from both the providers, but it also comes from meetings. It comes from building a community that is concerned about your sobriety. And so we provide that. And the one thing that we can't provide is want to. Although you would be surprised, even many people who come into drug court because it's cheap It's cheaper than getting a conviction. People come into drug court because they realize I'm in the nursing program, and if I get a conviction for possession of drug paraphernalia, I'm never going to get my nursing license. So I got to get this charge dropped. So I'm going to go to this drug program, and I'm going to successfully complete this program. Or whether it's for some other reason. As they progress through the program, as they get the knowledge and the understanding, many of them will kind of catch on and figure it out. And we have a lot of success with individuals who get the desire partway through the program, because they begin to understand that, oh, you know, life not getting messed up all the time is substantially better than it was before. Now, technically speaking, if you are coming into voluntary admission into drug court, you have to have a significant drug problem. But you primarily prove that by saying, I got a drug problem. So if you are caught shoplifting, if you are caught really almost any misdemeanor, it can be as crazy as trespassing. But if you are willing to say, I have a drug problem and I want to get my drug problem addressed, we'll let you in. The only people who are ineligible other than the convicted third felon, is if we believe that you're a dealer, then we can exclude you, because obviously we don't want to let dealers into drug court. We got a big market for you. But otherwise, you can come in. The legislature has acknowledged that there are certain crimes that are obviously related to drug use. And in those crimes, you don't have to admit anything other than to say, I want to be in drug court. That includes possession of marijuana. That includes possession of any type of paraphernalia, whether it's your heroin needle, whether it's your spoon, whether it's your pipe for smoking methamphetamine, or your pipe for smoking marijuana or cocaine. Any paraphernalia is a misdemeanor, and you can come into drug court. What I've found, and this is just a matter of opinion, but what I've found is generally even the people who are charged with possession of 20 grams or less who are caught smoking, if you are being arrested for smoking marijuana, you have a rather significant marijuana use issue, or you wouldn't get caught. You know, I mean, you use it so often and so frequently that you use it in places that's just plain stupid, and that's why you get caught. The people who smoke marijuana once every blue moon or a couple times a month or whatever, they smoke in their backyard and they're not going to get arrested. The people that are driving around town while they're smoking, the people that go to the park to sit around and smoke, they have a significant use issue, and that turns into a drug problem. So they're all welcome in drug court, because we want them to get the information and we want them to get the knowledge that they need to be able to go forward in court. And this is rather interesting. This is the face of drug court, and this is just a kind of this is an individual. Obviously, we don't talk about whose names, but this person was 32 years old when they came into drug court. They'd had many arrests before, began using drugs as a teenager, started out with marijuana, and then it escalates. This one was primarily using prescription drugs and alcohol. He had been to previous treatments. He had a wife and a child and a job and was doing fine. He didn't have a problem. He just liked to be high every day. And they'll tell you that that's where they were when this starts out. And this person had significant marital discord, because those kind of things kind of come with being high all the time, unless you're both high all the time. And at the end, he's got a full-time job. He has bought a second home. The relationship is doing much better. They're going to have another baby. He's very active in the Narcotics Anonymous community. He's active in alumni drug court outreach programs, helping others, and has over 5 years of sobriety. And that's the kind of success that we look for. That's the kind of success that we do pretty well with. And that's what makes the program worthwhile, both for all of us as taxpayers and for those of us who work in that program every day. Here are some benefits to the community. As you can see, that first line up there, we think we saved $936,802 because of incarceration avoidance through drug court. Now, that's a hard number to figure out. It's if you're just Joe average, right now it's $65 to $70 a day is the average cost to Marion County of having you in a Marion County jail. So, and what we try to do in coming up to that number is to make a reasonable estimate of how long people would be in jail who come into misdemeanor drug court. We don't just run the numbers up and say, well, this guy would have got a year. If it was the kind of a charge, it was probably going to result in probation and 30 days in jail, or probation and 5 days in jail, or whatever. We try to use those numbers to give ourselves sort of a realistic number there. We save lives, which helps to increase public safety by decreasing future crimes. We provide treatment rather than jail. And Problem Solving's court have a solution for local community rather than burdening taxpayers with additional jail time. I think we save money. In addition to those, which are kind of the standards, some of the other things that we do that really benefit the community, the first one is, as I indicated, one of the things I'm the proudest of, which is we have babies that are born drug-free. I don't know how much that saves, but it saves a lot of money in addition to what it means for that child. We save families. Families are destroyed by drug use every day. If we can get that partner off of the drugs, sometimes we get both off, even though one's not in the program, one is. But we save families, we keep families together. We get kids back to school, kids that miss school all the time because everybody's too stoned to take them to school. Kids that don't go to school are constantly being pushed around from foster homes because mom and or dad are constantly being arrested. We improve their lives. And the other thing that we do is we identify co-occurring disorders. One of the things that happens as you come into court, you're required to do your evaluation. You're required to go to your treatment. We staff every week. If the treatment providers come in and say, you know, I think Bob's got other issues. I think he's got some mental health issues that need to be addressed. I order Bob to go get a mental health evaluation because he's got to do whatever I tell him. And if we come back with that evaluation and we see that there's an issue there, we make sure that it's addressed. And so by doing that, that's a huge benefit not only to the person, but eventually many times those people with those co-occurring problems, they just become a bigger drain on society as a whole. There are currently 7 misdemeanor drug courts in the state of Florida. There could be one in every county. I think they're growing a little bit. Those are the 7 counties where there are misdemeanor drug courts. Obviously, we're very proud that we have 2 of them here in the 5th Judicial Circuit. As you can see, Broward, Miami, Okeechobee, and some of those are pretty big counties with a lot of money and a lot of people. And we don't have a lot of money, but we do the best we can to provide the services to our citizens and to do it as cost effectively as we possibly can. The biggest challenges that we have right now are prescription and designer drugs. These crazy synthetic drugs where they make this stuff up and spray it on weeds and then they sell it in the little bags that say Scooby-Doo on them. That stuff is not only illegal, but it's terrible. It's literally sprayed on like with a bug sprayer. They package it up and they sell it. There's no telling what's in it. They constantly change the formula. Recently, in this last year, Attorney General Pam Bondi has had some modifications made to the law where she can stop them quicker. Social media is a big problem because if you go on social media, you can find all about how to avoid being caught. You can find out how to skip the screens. I had a person in misdemeanor drug court who was going on Facebook telling other people in general, which included someone else in drug court, how to avoid the screens. And just when we figured that out, of course, first we sanctioned him by sending him to jail for a while. He didn't get it, and so then we removed him from drug court. If you are removed from drug court, you go back on the docket. Your charges are the same. You still have the right to have a trial. Things that you've done during drug court, conversations that you've had with your treatment provider are not admissible in your trial. And so we do the best we can that if you flunk out of drug court, you go right back to ground zero. You've got a lawyer. You can have a trial. You can enter a plea. You have all of your options available. So by going into drug court, you don't lose any of your constitutional rights, and you don't, hopefully you don't prejudice yourself, and hopefully you complete it, and you get on a path to a better life. The other problem that we have quite frankly, is prescription drugs. Prescription drugs, there are so many of them. There's so many drugs in the house. There's so many drugs that aren't completed. And so it's so easy, especially for the young people, to go to grandma or mom and dad's cabinet. And I mean, there's stuff that you don't even know is in there anymore. That's another one of our big problems is, and that's a society issue, but that affects misdemeanor drug court. It affects every drug court because there's just so many drugs available. There's no real way to get rid of them. You know, if they give you a Percocet for a procedure and you get done and you didn't really need it, and so you got a bunch of Percocet or oxycodone or whatever laying around, it sits in your cabinet. You're not supposed to put it in the toilet. You're not supposed to put it in the trash. So people stick it in the cabinet because they don't know what else to do with it until Junior comes along, and then it disappears and you don't even know it's gone because it's been in the back of the cabinet. That's a big problem, but hopefully we're working on trying to create some solutions for that. Any questions? Oh, thank you. Did I do all on time? Go ahead.